Hello everyone, welcome back yet again. Things on the front line continue to ramp up rapidly, and we do have one very interesting update that I will get to at the end of this video. And that update on the front line is a complex and just in general weird and unknown story that we're gonna have to see what happens with this one. But I will of course talk about what we do know and what we think will happen. And before that, we're gonna go through the off the battlefield and political updates, and we're gonna go through then we'll go through the frontline updates, and then we'll get to that one big one at the end of the video. That's the plan for this one. So I'm going to start off with the political updates from yesterday. This is because we did get some pretty decently, we got some big updates yesterday for the political wise, but the front line was just not much to talk about on the front lines. So that's why I didn't make a video. But we did get some big political updates, so I'm going to look at those now. Then I'll also tell you today's political updates. Then we'll get to the front lines, see what happened over the front lines over the last 2 days. So, just starting off right off the bat, we have Vladimir Putin is set to hold a bilateral meeting with Xi Jinping. So, it doesn't say where, how, it's just a little quick little message, letting you know that this meeting is going to take place. It's not the first, obviously, so we're not too much to talk about that. It's not much of a surprise right there. Russian forces have attacked Ukrainian cities with missiles and drones again. Civilian casualties reported in Lviv. So Lviv is this city right over here in western Ukraine. What you see here, Russian forces were able to strike this city way over here in western Ukraine. It's not the first time. They've done it a lot of times, but nevertheless, they did strike this city, and reports say that there are casualties, civilian casualties. So we'll have to see what happens with that. Well, I'll get to it because it was in today's update as well. But in today's update, Poland mentioned how they will help Ukraine rebuild Lviv and repair damages from the Russian missile attack. So that's gonna be the today's update. I'll get to that anyways. But we have a picture here that I can't really show you guys, but I can, however, just kind of give you an idea. This is basically the path of the Russian missiles. They came in from the south, from this direction, heading up, and they moved over top of Zaporizhia. The rest came down, and it looks like to actually get to Lviv, they came down flying this way and flew over northern Ukraine before turning south towards Lviv. And we had some few cross the border right here and strike this area right there. So what do you expect? That's just kind of the usual. 7 out of 13 missiles and 22 out of 29 UAVs were destroyed over Ukraine during a massive Russian attack today. So Ukraine's claiming they shot down 7 out of 13 missiles and 22 out of 29 UAVs. Is that true? Is Ukraine telling the truth on that? We don't know, but that's what they're claiming, and it's probably pretty accurate. Okay, here's a big one. The head of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Ukraine, Kaluba, resigned. He's played a decent-sized role in this war since the beginning. Kaluba, he's been mentioned quite a few times, but we now know that he is out. He is no longer the Minister of Foreign Affairs. It does not say who will be replacing him, but we'll find out soon enough. Prime Minister of Ireland, Simon Harris, arrived on an official visit to Kyiv. The United States is preparing a new military aid package for Ukraine in the coming weeks. White House spokesperson John Kirby stated this. So a new aid package will be coming out. It will probably include the usual Javelin, Stinger missiles, HIMARS ammunition, 155 millimeter ammunition, that kind of stuff. So that's probably not going to be anything big about that, just the usual stuff. Norway allocated more than 48 million euros for Ukraine for drones and strengthening air defense. Obviously, Norway has been kind of like that's kind of what their focus has been. Norway's kind of been like the country that's really helping Ukraine with their air defense, and they've allocated more money for that. So that's some good news right there for Ukraine. This is okay. According to Zelensky, here's some interesting news. Interesting news. According to Zelensky, Ukraine plans to keep the territory of the Kursk region until we force Putin to negotiate. So that's kind of there you go. That's kind of the statement that says that this whole thing that Ukraine's got going on in the Kursk region, that their whole point of this is that we're in here and we're not leaving unless we are forced out. We are not going to pull out. We are staying here until Russia basically surrenders, and we're not going to pull out. And the only way we'll ever be pushed out is if we are literally pushed out by Russia. If Russia forces us out. So that's Zelensky saying that we're not going anywhere. Our forces are staying in Kursk and they're not leaving without a fight. We have some pictures here. One is simply, they're both of them are of tanks. We can see the transfer of units of the Belarusian army to the Ukrainian border continues. In the photo, T-72B tanks with tactical sign B. So the fact that they have a tactical sign here is interesting. So it obviously the B card just stands for like Belarus, something like that. But I mentioned in my last video, we are now seeing consistent buildup of the Belarusian army at the Ukrainian border. Like we saw this before, at least like 3 or 4 times. But this is the first time. It's been about like 3 or 4 weeks at this point with consistent buildup of the Belarusian army at the border with Ukraine. And I wouldn't be surprised if the Belarusian army is also with or being supported by Russian units that are in the among the Belarusian units also going to the front lines or going to the border with Ukraine. So we're really gonna have to see what happens here, but just putting it out there that this is the first time that it's gone on for this long. Never before have we seen such consistent buildup at the Belarusian border with Ukraine since the very start of the war when the Russians crossed through Belarus to get to Ukraine. Aside from that, this is the biggest time that we've seen this. So, and they have and it says in these tanks that they're saying that they're saying to the border have a tactical sign. That's just simply B, the letter B. So we're going to see what happens with that. But is anything really going to come of this? Will the Belarusian army strike into Ukraine? If they do, it could be Belarus is not really that powerful of a country, but because Ukraine is already so insanely stretched, maybe Belarus would be able to overpower the Ukrainian force. If they were to attack, along the whole front line, it might be enough that the Ukrainian army just can't handle it. It would be too much for them. But then at the same time, the Belarusian army is just not really expected to do very well, even against Ukraine. They would probably have to be supported by regular Russian forces if they were to attack. So, and as of right now, that hasn't happened yet. That's all just speculation. But the Belarusian buildup continues at the border with Ukraine. Great Britain signed a contract for the purchase of 152mm ammunition for Ukraine. The estimated cost is about £300 million. So just some more aid to Ukraine, some ammunition, the usual stuff. Alright, that's going to be all for yesterday. Now we're going to go ahead and, of course, get to today's updates. In today's update, we do have some more pretty interesting updates. And one of them involves Turkey. That was probably that's probably the biggest one. But let's just get to those right now. So, a quote from Zelensky. Putin will sneeze about what will happen to the Kursk region and Donbass. The main thing for him is to continue the war. So, just a statement from Zelensky. He's basically just simply saying that Putin wants to continue the war. He doesn't want peace. He wants this war to continue. That's really what Zelensky is saying. Zelensky again stated, "We had signals that the Russians want to create a buffer zone near Sumy Oblast and Chernihiv Oblast. The operation in the Kursk region will last as long as we need it for victory. The Russians withdrew 60,000 troops to the Kursk region." So, that's kind of the same thing he said yesterday. So he's basically saying, just in more detail, that Ukraine is going to continue its fight in Kursk until basically Russia agrees to Ukraine's terms, not necessarily a surrender, but of like a peace. It's not necessarily Russia surrendering, but it's like we're going to agree to what Ukraine wants for peace, basically. So, in a way, it's a surrender, but in other words, Zelensky is saying that the Kursk, what's going on in Kursk, will not stop until Ukraine wins this war. Basically, is what he's saying. And we don't even know. Will Ukraine win the war? Will they be forced out of Kursk? We don't know. We'll just have to see what happens. He also claims that 60,000 troops were sent to the Kursk region. He doesn't say from where. Were they pulled off the front lines? Were they newly mobilized or volunteers? Were they sent from Siberia and these bordering area other countries from way out here, and they were sent to Kursk? Did it even happen at all? Don't know. It's what Zelensky is claiming. 60,000 troops were sent to Kursk by the Russians. So if that's true, if the Russians really did send 60,000 troops to the Kursk region, then we can start counting days before this Kursk incursion is pushed out, because the Ukrainians have at most 10,000 soldiers in the Kursk region. Maybe a little bit more, but it's not that much more than 10,000, if it's even 10,000 at all. So if the Russians really are sending 60,000 troops to the Kursk region, then we can start counting days before this Kursk incursion is ended. It will be pushed out by those Russian forces. More stuff from Zelensky. He is admitting that Polkrost is a very difficult situation, but he also says that the shots are now not 1 to 12, but 1 to 3, because certain forces and means are stretched. He's admitting that the Ukrainian army is overstretched, but that the odds are not necessarily as bad as they used to be. I don't personally think that's true. I don't believe that. I think the odds, like the logistics and the what's the word? The formations, the numbers, and all that of the Ukrainian army is just too far behind. They're too far stretched. If anything, it has gotten worse for the Ukrainian army, especially in this part of the front. So no, it's not improving in terms of its firepower for Ukraine at all. I just don't think that's true. The Parliament of Ukraine dismissed Kaluba from the post of Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Ukraine. This was stated by Zaluzhnak. I don't even know who that is. It doesn't say. So he's claiming Kaluba didn't resign. He was actually forced. He was dismissed by the parliament. So say what you want. It said he resigned. Now it says he was basically forced out, or maybe he was just forced to resign. So either way, Kaluba, not the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. That's all that really matters. That's all you need to know about that. And today, the Ukrainian military claims they shot down 60 out of 78 Russian Shahed drones. Another 15 were lost in location. So, another big Shahed attack by the Russians. Ukraine claims they shot down most of them. That's, the usual stuff. Zelensky will come to the meeting of Ramstein in Germany, which will be held tomorrow. This was stated by Spiegel. So a meeting in Germany, Zelensky's going to be there, and that's going to be tomorrow. So I'm sure we'll have some more news about that tomorrow. More Belarusian stuff. Belarus announced that they had detained an agent of the Japanese Special Services. So I saw this earlier as well. That Belarus, they claimed there was a Japanese agent in Belarus, and the Belarusians were able to detain him. So I've already heard about this earlier. That's kind of that is some big news if that is true. If it really is a Japanese agent all the way over here in Belarus, and they were able to catch him, it could be a big deal, and it kind of already is a big deal. So we'll have to really see how that plays out. Here's some important information. Polish Prime Minister Tusk said Poland will help restore Lviv after Russian missile strike. So I kind of already spoiled that one a few minutes ago. That Lviv was hit by a missile. There were casualties. Poland is saying that they're going to help Ukraine fix the damages, basically. We have a quote from Putin now. Putin stated, "The sacred duty of the Russian armed forces is to drive the enemy out of the Kursk region and protect citizens." Now, okay, obviously Putin would say something like this, but the fact that he says this today and at the same day that Zelensky claims that Russia is sending 60,000 troops to the Kursk region, it could be a coincidence, but there actually might be a connection here that Russia has decided that they have to take some extreme measures to knock out this Kursk offensive by the Ukrainians, and that is and it is now happening. It's in the process, or they're getting ready to launch this big counterattack with all these troops that way outnumber Ukraine. So we want to see how that plays out, if it even happens at all. And it might have already started, but we'll get to that. Putin said that he has not called Western leaders, including the U.S., for a long time. No surprise there. He did talk to some Western leaders a while ago. I remember Chancellor Scholz a few months ago visited Moscow. That was obviously a big deal. He met with the Hungarian Prime Minister. He's talking about phone calls, though. He has not called them. So that has not happened either. Military personnel from Russia, Belarus, Kazakhstan, and Tajikistan arrived in Kyrgyzstan, which is right here. They will take part in CSTO exercises. So we got some military exercises happening between Russia, Belarus, Tajikistan, and Kazakhstan. And it's taking place in Kyrgyzstan. The CSTO is basically Russia's NATO, which is a combination of countries like Russia, obviously the countries I just said, as well as Armenia, I think, is in there. I'm not sure. I think Armenia is in there. Turkmenistan, Kazakhstan, I'm pretty sure they're in there. Uzbekistan, I'm pretty sure. It's basically mostly made up of countries that were previously Soviet countries. There's a few countries that are not in the alliance. Obviously, Ukraine's one of them, and so are the Baltic states. But that's basically what the CSTO is. If you didn't know that, it's basically Russia's NATO. Here's the big news. This is the biggest one probably. Erdogan will attend the BRICS summit in Kazan, which is here, according to Haberturk TV reports. Okay, so a few days ago, Turkey officially submitted its request to join BRICS. That's a big deal. So Turkey, this country that is, remember, Turkey is a part of NATO. Turkey is a member of NATO. BRICS is this economic union that is led by Russia. BRICS literally is the first letter of all the countries that are part of it. So BRICS is, or B is Belarus, R is Russia, I is India, C is China, and S, it's not spelled B-R-I-C-K, it's B-R-I-C-S. And so it's B Belarus, R Russia, I India, C China, and then S is South Africa. And when South Africa joined BRICS, that was a big deal. That was a pretty big shock that South Africa would join BRICS. So now Turkey is actually submitted a request. They submitted their application to join the BRICS economic union, basically. So that's a big deal because Turkey is kind of been this outlier that's like kind of pro-Russia, kind of pro-West. And the best way to describe Turkey is that they're not pro-West, they're not pro-Russia, they're pro-Turkey. Turkey is the only one is just pro-Turkey. They'll help the West when it suits them. They'll help Russia when it suits them. And as of right now, they have decided that they want to join this Russian economic union, and that is a big blow to NATO and the West, especially as Turkey is part of NATO, and they want to get into this Russian-led economic union. So that's a big blow and a big embarrassment for NATO, if you will, that Turkey is going to do this. Or wants to do this, and that Erdogan is now going to be at the next summit for the BRICS organization. Next, we have Serbian President Alexander Vučić has categorically denied the claims of his political opponents about the possibility of Serbia transferring its 14 MiG-29 fighter jets to Ukraine in light of the acquisition of 12 French Rafale, something like that, jets. It's French. French is, no offense, but French might be the weirdest language in the world. It looks like it's Rafale. It's probably Rafale, something like that. Sorry, yeah, just a little joke, but yeah, French is a really hard language to pronounce. But anyways, so I guess there was talk that Serbia, which is a country that is pro-Russia, might give fighter jets 12 or 14 MiG-29s to Ukraine if France in exchange gives them 12 French fighter jets. And the president is saying, nope, fake news. That's not going to happen. We're not giving Ukraine anything for any French anything. Here's some big news. Lithuanian president announced that NATO countries are holding discussions on shooting down Russian missiles over Ukraine. That could be a problem. So Lithuania, Estonia, and Latvia are probably the three countries that are the most anti-Russia. They're the most go for Ukraine. They're all for they're so pro-Ukraine that if Ukraine had nukes, they would probably be okay with saying, hey, Ukraine, you can nuke Russia, but Russia, you can't nuke Ukraine. Like, that's how pro-Ukraine that they are. And now Lithuania is claiming that there's talks that NATO might shoot down incoming Russian missiles over Ukraine. So, think about that. Let's say there's a Russian missile, flies out of, I don't know, Samara, flies this way, and it's heading for Lviv. It's heading for Vinnytsia. It's heading for Vinnytsia. So it's gonna fly this way, just fly over Ukraine, heading for Vinnytsia. But then suddenly over here in Lublin, a missile, an anti-aircraft missile, something gets fired, launches up, flies this way, and intercepts the Russian missile right around Belarus, whatever that is, Belarus. That would obviously be a major escalation and a problem for this war. Because how is that allowed? Is that NATO entering the war, basically? that missile was not attacking a NATO country. It was attacking a country that Russia is actively at war at, and it flew over their enemy's territory, not NATO's territory. It flew over their own territory first of all before flying over their enemy's territory. And now this missile comes from a supposedly neutral country, a country that's not in the war, and it shoots down the Russian missile well before it reaches anywhere near NATO. That would be a major escalation. It would really start risking direct conflict between NATO and Russia directly. Is it going to happen? Almost certainly not. Some countries have already said that that's not going to happen. No way. I mean, at one point there was even talk. I think Estonia. Estonia are one of the countries of NATO. It was probably one of the Baltic state countries. They even talked about, let's shoot down Russian missiles before they even get to Ukraine. A missile launches out of Luptix. Let's fly over there and knock the missile out of the air before it even gets to Ukraine. Let's do that. And obviously that's not going to happen. There's no way that would go. It wouldn't work. It would cause a war. It would cause things to go crazy, and NATO just doesn't want that. It's just not that. So that whole plan is not going to materialize. And with that, that is now all of your political updates. I know there was a lot of them, but we got through them. So now, obviously, we're going to go and look at the battlefield. Let's get this over with now. So, as I don't want to get this to be a 20 million minute long video. So let's start from the bottom, just work our way up. We got some more Russian advances around Prechtistivka. A few more pieces of field fell into Russian hands. This area right here and this area right there. Not much to it, but it did fall to Russian hands. It looks like, if I have to predict what's going on here, and also the Ukrainians began to actually retreat. They actually pulled back. They didn't just like pull back a little bit. They actually pulled back significantly back to this tree line over here and this one right there. And they also are pulling back to behind this road right here. And in general, they're falling back onto the village of Zolotna Niva. Falling back onto that village. And an important detail here, look at this. It's the only village, literally the only one that stands between Russia and Veliki Novosilka. Remember, when the Ukrainians launched their 2023 counteroffensive, they were the Russians were right here. Like they had control of Neskuchny, they were right on the outskirts of Veliki Novosilka. And that's kind of like the only village of some size in this whole southern Donetsk. Like, literally, that's basically it. And the Russians seem to be it looks like the Russians are starting to put pressure here. So in just the last, 2 days, 3 days, something like that, the Russians have advanced about 4.22 miles along this highway. So if they can keep it up, they will reach the edge of Novosilivka, or Veliki Novosilivka, in another 10 miles. So they've already covered just under 1/3 of the way from where they started. So that's big. And long story short, that's big. If the Russian forces can keep it up, they will be able to get to Veliki Novosilka and be able to possibly attack it and take it without having to go through the same villages that they had to go through in 2023. They won't have to retake these exact same villages again to get the Veliki Novosilka. They'll advance along this highway and take it like that. If they can take it before retaking these villages, it will force the Ukrainians to also give these up, and they'll get them back for free. So that might be Russia's plan. So far, it's advancing. It is clearly developing on a daily basis at this point, but it's still not it still hasn't been clarified that this is like a major Russian push yet. So we'll have to see what happens. But other than that, we do have more, and we do have big updates in this area once again. The Ukrainian forces have reportedly completely withdrawn from this entire open field and tree line area, and have withdrawn and are now holding their positions along this road. Doesn't say what it's called, but this road that goes from Krasnohorivka up through Zalani Druha. This road is generally, and they're also holding their positions in Zeleny Persha. So the Ukrainian forces are in general holding a line from Zeleny Persha down to Krasnohorivka and have abandoned all the territory to the east of it and are focusing on this road as their main area of defense. However, despite that, the Russian forces are already advancing behind it because they've captured this area right here, this significant sized area, and they have managed to almost completely capture the village of Lysivka, and they're about to storm the village of Ukranska. and at the same time they are about to enter the large village of Hern of Hernka of Hernk, and if they can take the village of Hernk, they will then be one village away, just Kurakivka, from encircling the Ukrainian forces east of this line, and the Ukrainian forces will likely continue their retreat. I'm gonna bet the Ukrainians, if Hernka starts to, like, if Russian forces are able to reach like the center of Hernka, the Ukrainian forces will abandon all this territory and will fall back to a line something like this. They'll have to, because if they don't, they'll seriously risk a large encirclement. And the Russian forces can keep. Look how much ground the Russian forces captured in just one day. They captured this in one day. That's 2.76 miles in one day. If they keep it up, then they will. If they can keep that up, then they will reach the river in 2 more days. Now that won't happen. It's definitely going to slow because they got these two really big villages right here. These 2 big towns. So that's not going to happen. But if it did, in 2 days, Russian forces would have encircled all of this. Maybe it will, but obviously that's not going to happen. That's just too ambitious. We have some unconfirmed reports that the Seladove, the Ukrainians might have retaken this part of the city right here. Like, it would be something like this. Again, it's unconfirmed reports. We'll have to see what happens. I'll update with that tomorrow if anything does happen. But I'm just saying the report is there that it might have happened. Okay, let's skip that and we'll come back to that. The big news is in New York. We'll come back to that. We have the Russian forces have basically managed to capture the entire village of Kalinia. Hold on, this is actually a little bit mistake. This is last time's advance. Let's bring that down a little bit. Yeah, this area is the new Russian advances. They basically managed to capture the entire. They have basically, except for this, the whole village of Kalinia is now in Russian hands. And this is the big one. Look at this. Russian forces managed to capture this gigantic area. We can see here it is 3.54 square miles, which is obviously a massive amount of a big chunk of territory. Now, Russian forces have now reached the canal, so we can probably bet that in the next 2 days, maybe even just 1 day, everything on the eastern side of the canal will fall to Russian hands in this area. It's not clear what Russia's goal here is, but we can probably bet that it's one of 3 things, or all 3 of them. They're going to advance, and they might have possible. Well, one option is that it's just a fluke. The Russians saw an opening, they took it, got a big chunk of ground, and that's all there is to it. Or it could be a large effort by the Russian forces to advance across the canal, where they will then either 1, turn north to hit Chasiv Yar from the south and take the village from the south as well as from the north. Option 2, they will advance directly onto Konstantinivka, and there's not much in the way. There's like 2 villages, or 3. This one, and they're not big. Take these, the Russian forces will blast their way into Konstantinivka long before having to take Touretsk or Chasiv Yar. Option 3, they will turn south to hit Touretsk from the northern direction. So that would be obviously a big deal. The Ukrainian force would have no choice but to withdraw from all of this, and also have to pull out from most of Touretsk as well, and probably just defend the western areas. Option 4/5 is that it's a combination of all of them. A combination of any one of those possibilities. It could be this way and this way, this way and this way, this way and this way. So it could be anything really. We'll have to see what happens. Okay, good. That's right. We got some more Russian advances up here. They've managed to capture some tree lines up by Stelmakivka, and they've in general begun to get rid of this bulge that's in the lines right here. Therefore, Ukrainian forces have been forced to step back towards this tree line right here, and have even stepped back behind it a little bit. So the Russian forces have advanced a little bit right there. Nothing big, but it's noticeable. You can see that's a decent little size chunk of ground right there. We have some changes, but I'm not certain on them yet. I will change the map soon. I believe there was some talk that the Ukrainian forces managed to capture some ground here or over here or something like that. I think it's here. So the Ukrainian forces managed to capture like 2 tree lines, like this and this. This area might have fallen. Not confirmed yet. We'll have to see what happens. If it gets confirmed by tomorrow, then yeah, I will change the front line. But as of right now, there's just nothing. There's no changes confirmed yet. But I'm just saying there is a chance Ukraine might have retaken like this forest patch right here. But again, not yet confirmed. We'll see what happens tomorrow. Now we go to the Kursk region, which is right up here. And there was a lot of talk about this. There was talk about 60,000 Russian troops are coming in. They're going to blast the Ukrainians away, something like that. Not yet. We're not really seeing 60,000 troops coming out of nowhere yet, but we are seeing Russian counterattacks. Russian forces have managed to recapture the village of Semenovka. And we see the Ukrainians yesterday captured this decent big chunk of ground. They captured all these villages. But the Russian forces are beginning to close in and retake this open ground here. And are trying to push the Ukrainians back here. They have retaken this one village. There are a few more that are in the gray zone before they will reach the actual Ukrainian lines. And in general, the Russian forces are starting to fight back pretty heavily. We are starting to see some heavy Russian fight back. So, I mean, at one point, the Russian forces were way back here. The Russian forces were still way back here, but they managed to retake that territory too. So it's starting to heat up, but the Russian forces are fighting back heavily now. Okay, that is all except for one of the map changes. Now let's get to that, because this map change it's a story. Let me tell you that. And it happens here in New York. As you can see here, we have changed the map. Before, it was like this. There's just flat front line right up here, up in Nelipivka. Now we have this weird, like, triangle of Ukrainian-held advancements. And the story but basically behind this is that I didn't believe it for a long time, and a lot of other people weren't really believing it. And then I'm trying to think of how I can explain this. It was reported a while ago that the whole entire city of New York fell into Russian hands, and a lot of people thought that was true. But there was talk that there was a Ukrainian battalion, something like that, or a company that was trapped inside of the steelworks, like the big factory that's right here. And then for the longest time, they were surrounded by the Russian forces here. Deep state maps, they never fully showed the city of New York under Russian control. They always showed this gray zone that was in the middle of the city. But now we have this report here, and this report suggests that the Ukrainians, that it was true. The Russian forces surrounded the Ukrainians, they had all this under control, but the steelworks itself was still under Ukrainian control that was encircled, and they were trapped in that area trying to hold on to it. And that the Ukrainians were able to gather some forces up here, and it was enough to counterattack and open a small little corridor along the railway, and reach and relieve those Ukrainian formations. And then, so long story short, what can we say about this? What do I think is going to happen? I didn't believe it was true because it just. First of all, if that was true, you would think that would get a lot of coverage. That would be a lot of people would be talking about that. That it's Ukrainian brigade trapped in this industrial area surrounded by the Russian forces. That would be like Mariupol all over again. That's like what happened in Mariupol and the Azovstal steelworks. It's like the exact same thing. But what I have to say, what I think happened here is that it was true. There was Ukrainians that were trapped inside of this steelworks. The Russian forces took all this ground. They surrounded it. Never fully took the steelworks. And the Ukrainians did muster a counterattack to reach the steelworks. But the twist here is I don't believe this is a big Ukrainian counterattack to restart the battle for the city of New York, relieve the encircled formations, and just impress their attack. I just don't think the Ukrainians have that in them to really restart the fight for this whole city of New York. But I do think that the Ukrainian forces will try at least to. But the whole point of this, what I'm trying to say, the whole point of this Ukraine operation was to rescue their trapped forces in the steelworks, so they didn't have to surrender. And if that is true, then what I'm thinking, what the whole point of this was to basically strike in, open a corridor, get the men out, and then we pull back. So I just don't think this territory is going to stay under Ukrainian control for very long. It's going to take maybe a day or two, maybe a week at most. But we'll see. Maybe I'm wrong. But I think personally that this was just a rescue operation. It was open the corridor, get the men out, and then get out of there basically before the Russian forces come closing in. Because and just look how narrow this is. With the corridor being that narrow, it's gonna be a almost a death sentence just trying to leave anyways, let alone hold on to this territory. So at the very least, even if the Russian forces have to fight to retake this northern part of the city, at the very least, this part of the city, the steelworks, will now fall into Russian hands. So the Ukrainians will pull their forces out at least back to here, but they'll probably go all the way back, but they'll at least pull back to here. This will fall back under Russian control. The steelworks will fall back under Russian control, and then they'll probably, or maybe like real quickly, there'll be some fighting, and they'll retake this area up here as well. So that's what I think is going on here. Ukrainian forces, this story was true. The Ukrainian forces were trapped in the steelworks. Ukraine got a counterattack together. They opened a small little corridor to get whatever men were left out, and then they're going to get out of there, and the Russian forces will retake the city again. Is what I think is going to happen. And that's what I think the full story behind this is. It was a heroic rescue operation to save the men, so they didn't have to surrender or die or anything like that. That's real. I think that's all there is to the story. It's certainly a big deal. I mean, let's look at that. That certainly is a big deal that this happened at all, and that this story is true. At least it is, or believed to be true. But at the same time, I don't think this held territorial wise. I don't think it's gonna last. I think the Ukrainians are gonna lose it again very soon. I think that I think that this territory will fall back into Russian control, at least up to here, and then after that, it would just be like, nothing ever happened. The Ukraine, it won't really change much. It's just kind of like a PR stunt. The one thing I do want to say though, I'm not sure if any of this is true at all. We just don't have any sort of video proof that this is even going on. Serious Maps updated his map, so I followed it. Deep State said the exact same thing, so I trusted it. But we don't have any video proof that I have seen that this is happening at all. So as far as I'm concerned, if this could all just be fake and Russian forces, and it never happened. Russian forces just controlled New York, and that's all there is to it, and they still do. But give it a couple days, and we'll see what happens, and then we'll know for sure what the full story is, and we'll see if New York really is in round 2, or if it never happened at all, or if it was a successful escape or rescue operation. So with that, that's gonna be all for today, guys. That's your map update, that's your political update, and that's your New York update. So with that, that's gonna be all for today, guys. Make sure you hit that bell button, subscribe, and make sure you can leave a comment down below. It really helps with the channel a lot. If you guys want to keep on seeing these videos come out and to keep on seeing them improve as well, just hit that button. It's totally free, doesn't cost you a thing. You can always undo it later if you want to. So with that, that's gonna be all for today, guys. I'll see you guys next time. Bye.